Hi, this is a video about modeling a digital version of this drone kit in Fusion 360 by Autodesk. I'm going to show you how I did it. Um, I have this kit, I purchased it, and I have all the parts, and I came up with this technique to get these things in quickly, and I'll show you how that works. So over here in Fusion, if I can get it open here. I scanned all the parts, basically all these carbon fiber parts that came with the kit, just one of each. There's in some cases there's many of each, but I don't need more than one. So on a scanner, I also put in a ruler for reference so that we can calibrate this image to be the right scale inside of Fusion. I'm not going to show how to do that right now, but that's just a technique. If you know how Fusion works, you'll recognize this. It's called a canvas. And so inside the canvas, I had this. Then I did some sketches on top of that. And here you can see the sketch. And I just basically traced these parts. It's pretty straightforward using all the nice sketching tools to create mirrors and repeating and stuff. Just trying to save time. We can repeat these sorts of things and mirror one side to the other side. You'll see that each of them has a center line, which I did to help make things faster. So then after that, you just simply extrude each of the parts. In this case, it depends on what you're modeling, but this is a good way to get started. Obviously, the prop was a little more complex, but I'm not going to get into that right now. So that's how that was made. Then after these parts are made, you just go into each of these things and you make them into their own component. It's very important. You never want to leave bodies. If you've used Fusion 360, you'll know that everything's made into a body, and you can combine bodies and create an actual object. But people often think that that's an actual object in the real world, but it's not. It's just a concept for the virtual world. But you want to make everything into its own component. And components in the browser are shown here as like a little white cube. So you see there's arm, top plate, camera mount, support plate. Each of these is a component. And in some cases, there's only one body that makes up that component. And in some cases, there could be a few bodies. Like in this case of the prop, I have the center part of the prop. I have one blade, I have another blade. They're all separate bodies, but they all are in essentially this folder, which is a component. The components have additional properties to them. Once you have a component, you can use them as like real objects in the real world. Export them as STLs for 3D printing, or you can assemble them into assemblies, which is what this video is mostly about. So that being said, I'll show you the next stage where I will use these. So you have to just basically take each of these things and you just right click on it, and you can do a save copy as. So what that will do is it'll make a new file over here in your browser. It's a completely different modeled file that's built from this one component. And this is a good way to organize your work, because then once you have these components exported or saved out, you can import them and use them in other projects. And it keeps your work nice and organized, and you can reuse stuff. So that's nice. That's it. So I'll show you the next step now. So to start creating an assembled model using components that you have created before, first thing you do is create a new file, and it'll be called untitled, of course. You have to save it first before you can import things to it, because it's like putting one file into another file inside the cloud. It won't do it until you do that. So I'm going to give this a name. It's going to call it drone assemble. All right. So now we get this blank slate. We can turn on the origin if we like, just to see where things are. First thing I'm going to do is go into my list of components I've created here and start bringing them in. The first one I'll bring in is the main plate. This is the main bottom plate of the drone. So you right click on that file and say insert into current design. And there it is. So now once it comes in, you can leave it where it lands. In this case, it's a little off center. You know, you can move it to the center. It doesn't really matter. So I'll leave it there. All right, just brought in a component, one of the arms. I already have the base plate. I have the offsets, which are aluminum tubes. They're called offsets. So I need 4 of these arms. So I'm going to just duplicate this one by copying, pasting. So it puts it there. I'm going to move the new one out of the way a bit. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these arms into their spots. So these screws here, boom, boom, go to these screws here. So it'll form an X shape. And after that, we'll use these spacers. So we go into Assemble, Joint. I'm going to pick the component I want to move first and the second component that I want to move to second. And you pick on a reference point where they'll be anchored. So the best anchoring spot will be this little hole for the drill or for the screw. So I pick on the side that's going to be touching the other part. So this is going to be underneath this part. This one will be, the arm will be underneath the plate. So I'm going to pick the top corner screw hole on the top. Now it goes invisible because it's been selected. Now I'm going to go under the other part, and this connection is going to go from here onto this one on the underside. So I'm going to click there, and it makes a little circle icon, but you want to make sure you get that surface, not like the surface in the back, because you could pick that, but we don't want that. We want the surface on this side. Click it, and now it joins. And the orientation is wrong, so now we have the opportunity to fix that. We'll turn it. And luckily the angle is one of the standard angles, so it just snapped. You can only have one connection point per part, otherwise the computer will get really upset because it might not be exact and it will be confused. At least that's my experience. So it's called a rigid joint. There's rigid joints, but there's also other types of animated joints. Revolute, sliders, etc., but we're not using those. So you say okay, now it's joined. That is a joint, 2 components joined. And so we just repeat that with the rest. That's it. I'll continue with the rest, but it's essentially the same idea. You keep adding pieces and attaching them. Okay, so I've added the offsets, and then I've added this base plate by attaching it to just one of the offsets. I took one of the holes and attached it to one of the offsets because for the program's purpose it only needs one connection point, even though in reality there's 8 connection points. Then I just oriented the base plate to line up with the top plate. So now we've got that done so far. The next thing we're going to do is bring in some more parts. You can see over here I've built all the parts separately, just like a catalog, and I can bring them in. So this is the plate that goes in the front over here on the left lower side. It's called a camera mount. That's the first person view camera. So I right click and say insert into current drawing, and it's chugging away. There it is, and just move it someplace where you can get to it. There it is. Now what's going to happen is these little tabs on the end are going to stick into these tabs here. So this thing's going to go horizontal, going to go vertical, different orientation than it is now. But that's not a problem. So let's see if I can work this out. center there. And then, oh, I had the, okay, there. Now its orientation is upside down, so I can flip it. There we go. Now it's flipped. Then I also need to turn it. And there it is. It looks pretty good. I could nudge it a little bit more towards center. But I think that's pretty good for this purpose. Okay. There it is. Alright, so over here in Amazon, this is the thing I bought. So this is what we're building. And you can see it's starting to look more like that. I've done the lower offsets, arms. Now I'm going to do these taller offsets that hold the top plate on. And there are these little offsets that are kind of there for landing gear, but I'm going to skip those. And then after we get that done, I'll do the little, put the engines on there and the props, and it should look more or less like this. So the next thing we need is these tall offsets. I need 6 of them, so right-click, insert into current design. It's cooking away, there it is. And we're going to copy and paste that 5 more times. Copy. That's 6, all right. Assemble joint. Pick the connection point on the offset, bump. And then pick, whoops, this one. Donk. Repeat joint. All right. I'm going to save it. How about that? All right, now bring in the top plate, which is this one down here, whoops, lower left. This is the top plate. Looking at it in the real one in my hand. Insert into current design. Right. Move it out of the way. Now I can attach to any one of these offsets, or you can even use this little camera mount, because I didn't design them perfectly. Oh, maybe that's just the way it is. So this thing has a little play in it for some reason, the way it's cut. So the offsets are a little taller, so we'll definitely mount to the offsets, because that's how it would be in true life, and this thing kind of floats. I guess you need to put some sort of glue or something to hold those tabs, but it's not my mistake, it's the way it was designed. So let's go over here, do another joint, and I only need to use one reference point, so I'll just pick the lower front corner, pick there, and then put it on top of this one. Flies over. Maintain the right orientation, so I don't need to twist it or anything, but there it is. It looks like it's where it needs to be. Okay. And that's the basics of that. Next, we can bring in the motors, which are here. Brushless motor. All right. Obviously, those pretty obvious where those go. They go on the ends here, so make a joint. Center the bottom of the engine. Boom. Whoops. Yep. I think that's, no, I picked the side. That's wrong. So that's wrong. You want to get, it has to be on the same plane. For some reasons, it'll maybe go on a different plane. So you can pick, well, I can pick the rim, and it'll still give me that center target. So anything that kind of references it. So we'll pick that, and then we'll pick the center of this on top, and there it goes. Oops, what happened? Huh. Didn't work. Let's try again. Oh. Huh. Well, that's because the motor is made out of many components in the other file, the external file where I built this. So it looks like it's... I'm not sure why it's doing that. It's wanting to pull it. It's trying to pull the one object without the rest, and that's probably confusing it. So let's see what happens. Okay, that went. Oh. Now that's because, the reason this happened is because this motor in its own file has not been joined. Has not been joined yet. So I'm just sort of pulling it apart over here. Now I can fix that. I'm going to save this. This is a fun experiment. So I'm going to leave this alone because this base is where it's supposed to be, and I'm going to go back into the file that has this and attach it. Attach the components over there, and then hopefully when I update over here, this should come back together. So let's go over to that file, the brushless motor, and so there's joints. So these are just sort of sitting in the right spot. So there's another thing here called make a joint as built, which is a little easier. If you already have things where you want it, you don't want to mess around. You can just do it this way. So you can see over here I got all them componentized. I don't have any floating bodies. You see there's no bodies folder because everything's been put into a component. So I got the rotor, which is this part that spins on top. I got the motor base, and I have the prop cap. So normally the prop would go on here. In fact, we should probably bring the propeller in here and stick it on. Definitely that could be a good idea. We can do that later in an update. But for now I'm just going to do just join these things. So first I'm going to do is a as-built joint. This one first, and then this one second. Okay, they're joined. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to pick the cap first. Whoops. And then this second. Okay, those are joined. Now let's save it. And before I leave, you can see there's a new folder called Joints. See, there's two joints we just made. So let's go back over to this one. And here you see the brushless motor says, this component is out of date. Update to the latest version. So you right click on it, get latest. Hopefully this will all pop together. Yep. Done. Cool, huh? Now we can, now this is up to date, we can copy and paste it. My joints. Let's pick the surface, and this previous file, the sketches will be on when you import it. So in the other file, I already can see a mistake in my engine. I forgot to this little notch. I want to do a circular repeat on it. That's just, I can go update that in the other file, and then it'll update here. So we'll do that later. But repeat joint. So let's try this again. I think I picked the actual sketch and not the physical object. So this time we'll make sure. Oops. Make sure to get the actual object. That's not it. That's the sketch. You can see it's extending past the actual object. So maybe that. Yeah. See how it went invisible? That means I've selected that object. That's good. Now I'm going to go back here, put it there. Okay. Now it moved that part, and then the rest of it followed because they're joints. You know, that they're joined to that. So go back over here. Let's do it again. All right, everything looked good. Stop the video for now. Okay, so in the previous video, I talk briefly about the motor having a mistake in it, and also the sketches kind of showing up when it was imported. So I'm going to fix those two things and we'll update it. So first of all, this little feature here, this cutout, in reality is 3 of them. So I'm just going to do a real quick modeling thing here just to fix that. So what I do is I go to create a pattern, circular pattern. Now I can pick bodies, features, faces, components to rotate a pattern. I'm gonna pick faces in this case because it's like a cutout. So I'm gonna pick all these interior faces that are part of the cut. Now Fusion's smart enough to know this is a cut, and we'll just magically make this work. I think probably should pick that too. I think it would probably figure that out, but let's make sure. Pick that. So the axis is going to be the center axis, the Z axis, which is this, I think. And we want 3 of them. It's not previewing very well, but I think it'll work. So let's see. Yeah. So now we got 3 of those. So that's fixed. So that's repaired. I'll turn off the sketches because they're annoying. Do a save. Since this is going to have props, to make this easier, I'm gonna add the props which I built over here on the left. We'll import them here and assemble it here onto this piece, and that way we won't have to deal with it later. All right, insert into current design. All right. I assume it. I just took these. I modeled these parts off the real parts, so I'm assuming that the height of this thing is the same as that gap. May or may not be, but in reality, they would be probably. I don't know where they sit. Probably sit right there. I'm just going to assume that's how it works. Assemble joint, rigid joint. Actually, you could say I want to do a revolute joint, but that would allow this thing to spin. You could animate the prop spinning around this pin here, but in reality that doesn't spin. This is all a rigid thing. This part here is the rotor that spins. So I guess we could convert that joint to be a revolute. We'll do that actually. That makes sense. I'll change that. I think. Yeah, I'll change that. But this one attached to this one is a rigid. So we're gonna pick the bottom side of this in the center, and then I'm gonna stick it right on this spot here, and there it goes. Yeah, it looks like in reality this cap, it screws on after you put this on. So both these joints I made are bad previously, so we're just going to destroy those. This third joint, you can name it. So I'm going to say that's the prop to rotor joint. These other 2 joints I'm going to delete because they're fucked up. Excuse my language. All right. So, joint, as-built joint. Now, so you have an as-built joint, it means you don't have to position anything, but this time we're going to attach this to the base, but we're going to make it revolute, which means, wait a minute, I guess you can't do it as-built in that case. We'll do it like this. So we'll do a joint, and we're going to do it again, but like we did in the other types, we're going to pick a feature to attach. So I'm going to pick this inner edge, attach it to but Like I said, we're going to make it a revolute. So now it spins. However, that's the wrong one. Excuse me, wrong. Wait, no, it is correct. Yeah, so wait, where's the joint? Yeah, it's down there. It's down the bottom. So everything's fine. We can animate it again. So what's spinning is this, not just the top spinning, but this base part's spinning as well. You just can't tell. But so it's animating for your enjoyment. You can stop anytime you want, and that's good. Next thing we want to do is I'm gonna move. I'm gonna place this top nut correctly on top of where it would be. So for fun, we can move it. Motor base, prop cap. So I'm gonna move it just for fun out of the way. Hopefully, okay. I guess the pin. I'm going to turn off the prop for a second. This little pin probably should be much longer. So I'm going to adjust that, press pull this up a bit so it extends past the prop. I would assume, I haven't looked at the motors underneath, but I assume it's something like this, but I don't really care too much. Anyway, so in reality it would go up inside. So let's turn the prop, and then we're going to do another joint. It's going to be a rigid joint, capture position, yeah. That's because when you move something and you do joints, it likes to make sure that you're like okay with the new positioning. It's whatever. Let's not worry about that too much. Pick the center of this thing. So even though this is a, what do you call it, hexagon, or not hexagon, six-sided, it kind of can figure out the center. So there's the center of that. And you would think I might want to stick it on top of this, but that's going to go inside. So I'm going to pick like the top of the prop just for a reference point, because that's where it would screw down to in the real world. And there it goes. It's still going revolute, because that's what I did last time. I don't revolute. Go back to rigid. So it's a rigid. Everything's rigid. All right. There's the motor. It's been fixed with the feature added in the circle. We got the joints revolute and the props on there. Everything looks good. We'll save it. Go back over here to the assembled drone. You can still see all the garbage from before, and the props are not showing. And it says here, hey, one component's out of date. Yes, I know, lots of them are. So we pick all these and say, right click and say, get latest. Maybe you have to do it one at a time. Maybe, all right, right click. Get latest. You gotta do it one at a time. That's annoying, but whatever. Oh no, I did it once, did them all. Okay, cool. So now all the props and the motors and the caps and everything are here. Looks good. Okay, in the last film, I put the props on, and I noticed afterwards that the prop is upside down. Subtle thing, but you know, the curve should be going the other way to push the air downward. So I can change that by editing the joint. So I got my prop to rotor joint, which I named conveniently. So we double click that. Maybe edit joint. Okay. So now we're gonna redo this. I'm gonna pick the other side. So the second one's fine, but the first one, which is the prop, I'm gonna get rid of that. And then this time I'm gonna pick the top here. And then it's going to attach that. But you can see that, what's going on here? You can see that's gone low because I put that same surface to that other surface, but I want to flip it. So they have a tool here called flip. So there's a lot of tools here to, you know, adjust your attachment point once you got it there. Those little targets are sort of, I mean, they're convenient. They usually work 90% of the time, 95% of the time. Once in a while, you got to, you know, just manually get it in there or tweak things. So here, tweak it, boom. Now it's in there. See? And hopefully this all works. Okay, now that pissed off the second joint, which is the cap, right? This one, because now it's attaching the cap to that other surface. What it's supposed to do is now it's the cap's upside down. So let's destroy that or edit that. Whoops, what the hell? What is this? Oh, okay. Edit joint. So that means the second attachment point, which is the first one is the cap, the second one is the blade. So we're going to fix the second one. And I'm going to pick this time this surface. What the hell? Oh yeah, and it did it upside down again. Flip it. There we go. So now this is fixed. Okay, here we are back at the assembled drone. And in the previous film, I updated the orientation of the props and had to adjust the caps that we saw. And now they're out of date again. So we're going to come back in here and do an update. Right click on that component, the brushless motor assembly, and say get latest, and then magically this should all switch. See, all switched. Everything's nice. All right, I made these little blue dampeners here, and there's a little plate that sits on top of those, and that's where your you could put an additional camera, first-person view camera on these drones. There's like a, well, that's not first-person view. That's like a high-end like GoPro or something. People like to put that on just to film it and then post it on YouTube and make nice films, because the first-person view cameras are not the best resolution. So that's an optional feature. I'm just I have it here. I'll put it in. So we're going to bring in these dampeners, insert into current design. And there are these little blue things. Let's put those out of the way. Again, we'll make 4 of them. Copy. So these go up in these little fat holes here, and they kind of sit in these little notches inside. So let's do a joint, and I'm going to pick this inside rim right there. That's where it's going to sit. And then put it up here. There. And now, there it goes. That's how it would look more or less in the real world. Yep. Okay. Those are all done. The little rubber dampeners / attachment grommet things. Those are done. I'm going to go get the camera plate, which is this guy over here in the lower left. Insert into current design. And there she is, sitting there. Alright, you can pick the top or bottom because it goes in that slot. So I'm going to pick this top corner here, and I'm going to stick it right in that spot, and that looks good. Okay, so this thing pretty much done. There's the drone assembled. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah, so I was going to use this now because basically what this is a model of the real parts that I got when I bought this kit, and I'm going to build my own covering and fairings, I guess you call them, to fit on here, and then we'll 3D print those. So now that I have this virtual copy of my actual hardware, I can design some virtual hardware and then translate the virtual hardware into real hardware, and do holes for the screws or whatever else, and vents for the ESCs, which sit on top of the wings that need cooling. So we'll have that. Might have some some streamlined, cool-looking fairing stuff, and that's the whole point of this. And that's about it. And just for fun, just as a reward, I always like to just give myself a little fun render. So let's do a little render. Yeah, Fusion cooks away at this, takes its time, but looks cool at the end. So anyway, this program is called Fusion 360. It's by Autodesk. It's free to use, non-commercially for hobbyists like me. It's a pretty good program. It's actually a very good program, especially for being free. It can do all this sort of stuff. It can do STLs for 3D printing. It can do milling paths for using a CNC machine, which I use once in a while. It's a great tool. When it doesn't crash, it's great. It crashes once in a while. It's kind of a little buggy program they keep changing and adding to, which is nice. It's an organic thing. Every few months you get new features, which are fun. And I like it. There it goes. That's the render. Thanks for watching. If you want, you can subscribe to my channel. I guess I'll keep posting more of these things. I've gotten pretty decent at this stuff. I guess I should probably share my knowledge. And that's it. Talk to you later.